Okay, welcome to DES 109 Graphic Design 1, everybody. It is currently January 29th, 12:30 in the afternoon Mountain Time. I am Melissa Kinney, your graphic arts instructor. We have Lenita with us today in the classroom. Hopefully we'll get another student or two, so I won't have to pick on just her. And don't be afraid, Lenita. That's an endearing an endearing term there. So we're going to be going over the assignment for week 2 and discussing the assessment just a little bit. And hopefully we can do 1 or 2 more critiques. We did a couple yesterday. Actually, I think we did quite a few yesterday. And we'll see if we can actually go a little bit further. So there we go. I'm going to stop the video there. Okay. So we have, for today, we have a quick review. We actually did the discussion details in yesterday's session because we had a bit of extra time. Excuse me. So I won't really need to do that unless Lenita here has some questions. We'll do a couple more critiques if I have time. I'm actually going to do that at the end. I think I'm going to rearrange the agenda here. Before I do the critiques, we're going to do a demo of the assignment, and we'll go over the assessment as well, just briefly, because I can't do the demo for it. So for a review for the learning objectives for week 2, we are discussing the relationship of the basic design principles with elements and how they work within the foundations of graphic design, essentially how we use both the principles and the elements together to create an aesthetic composition. That is, like I said, we're discussing that, so that's in our discussion. We are, in the assignment, going to be applying design styles to a composition using cultural influences. So essentially what that means is we'll be taking information from the flashcards, the research that you guys did with your flashcards last week. You'll be picking an era, and you will be taking the influence of that style of that era and applying it to a composition for this week, for your own pad. Then in the assessment, we'll be analyzing the design principles, how you use them in your project. You will be also explaining a little bit about your design process. So I actually want to go over just briefly. I don't think I went over the announcements yesterday, so we'll do that. I already went over the objectives. I'll point out the media again. We did do that yesterday, but I'll do that one more time just to make sure that everybody knows where they're supposed to be looking. And like I said, we already did the discussion yesterday. That was kind of unexpected from yesterday's class, so that's why it's still in this slide. Doing the assignment and the assessment. The assignment is the era-themed advertisement. I'll show you a couple benchmarks in Canvas so you guys can see some nice examples. And then the paper is the assessment, the design process, and the self-critique. So let me actually open up Canvas real quick so I can go over the announcements and the course media. So just to make sure that you guys are kind of following along, this week I had actually posted an assignment on how to view your grades, the feedback that I give and the comments that I give. I am not quite finished with the grades. I should have gotten to everyone's discussions last night, but I believe I need to actually look at the assignments, the project. So I'll be finishing that up today so that by tomorrow morning you guys are all set. I also, because we did our first critique yesterday, I had posted some information on giving and receiving a design critique. This is just kind of a very brief article because I don't like to overwhelm my students with a lot of information. So most of the things that I post are quick videos or they're quick articles, but they are beneficial. I try to make sure that I'm weeding out, so I'm not giving you guys stuff to read just to read it. And this article kind of gives a nice basis for how and why critiques are important, and how to help your colleagues, your coworkers in providing a useful critique, because it's very easy to just give your opinion of something, and how to actually receive a critique as well, because that's also, it can be very difficult to accept someone's criticisms and then to take that criticism and turn it into something positive. So you try not to look at it that way. You don't call it criticism, you call it feedback, you call it comments, suggestions, because criticism has a kind of a negative connotation. So we have just some kind of do's and don'ts, and it's actually incredibly helpful. So that is in that announcement. We have class coach Rachel Fields, her schedule for this week. Right in here, we have her information, contact information, and her hours for the specific days. Recording was posted yesterday, and then this actually is another little tidbit in terms of why and how grammar is so important in your design, making sure that you have good punctuation, spelling, you don't have any spelling mistakes, that kind of thing. Just some things to kind of keep in mind as you're designing to make sure that you give off the best impression that you absolutely can. And it also actually highlights some of the reasons why you don't want to, things that you don't want to do, excuse me, I can't even speak today. So if I were writing this, I would be proofing it and fixing my grammar. But since this is a live feed here, I can't exactly do that. So it kind of points out the things you want to try to avoid. There we go, that's a better way to say it. So those are the just the announcements for this week. And oh, and actually I had skipped over this one. This is the critique disclaimer, just reminding everybody that if you don't want me to use a critique, use a project of yours for a critique, that is absolutely okay, absolutely acceptable. Just shoot me a message and let me know. I do not use names, so you don't have to be worried in that aspect. And sometimes the live critiques are actually beneficial, especially if we get someone in the class with us, because we can kind of go back and forth. Excuse me. But I do know that some people are still a little bit self-conscious, and that's okay. So I just need to know ahead of time so I don't accidentally use your work. And for the readings and the videos, you scroll down and find, oh, actually, no, the live sessions has the yellow. So week 2 right here, we have the pre-recorded lecture discussing the elements of design and how to integrate them in with the principles, which they actually also review the design principles from the previous week, the contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. It was helpful. Oh, good. I'm glad that the feedback was helpful to you, Lenita. She just mentioned in the chat that it was the critique that you were talking about, right? That the feedback was helpful for you in the recording. Yep. Okay, that's great. I'm really glad to hear that. I don't get a lot of feedback on my own performance, so that's really good to know. So those of you listening at home or watching at home, there you go. So let's see. Again, we have the pre-recorded lecture, and we have 2 different written articles: visual elements, basic things that can be seen, and 4 copywriting tools for graphic designers. And then some short videos on lynda.com in the playlist there for Illustrator tools. Super helpful for those of you that really haven't used Illustrator that much before, or maybe that you've used it before, you were comfortable with it, but maybe you just need a little refresher. So there, as you can see, it gives the times here. This is not a ton of time at all, and especially if you're kind of doing it alongside the video, it goes by really quickly. So that's the media for this week, in addition to these sessions, obviously. So like I just pointed out, the pre-recorded session, integrating the design principles and elements, the PDF for visual elements, the writing help, the copywriting tools article there, and the lynda.com Illustrator to videos, drawing and shapes, and the type, which essentially, you know, the letters, the words, and techniques. So I don't want this to kind of, oops, confuse you guys and say, think that that means the types of techniques. That's type and techniques in using type. So like I said, I just kind of, I wanted to actually make sure we did the critiques first. So we will, I'm gonna pull up over here. I'm just kind of flipping through them real quick over here on my other screen, because I wanted to try to get to 2 other students, and I'll probably actually, my Acrobat is giving me some trouble, but there we go. All right, no, it didn't do that one. And didn't do this one. Okay, so I do have two students' work here that I had not done yet. So I'm gonna leave those open because I did say I wanted to kind of switch things around and do the demo first. So that's what we are going to do. Oh, that's the secret question. We're gonna wait on that. So you know, I have Illustrator in this window, so I will keep the share right there. Okay, here we go. I have Illustrator all squared away. So now in this assignment, we are, if we go to the page, modules, and we're going to go to week two's assignment, the assignment makeover, or the advertising makeover, excuse me. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be first looking at those flashcards that you designed last week. You narrowed down those 2 errors to 3 that those are the ones that you made the flashcards from. You're going to pick 1 error of those 3 that you narrowed it down to. And from this page here, week 2 assignment, advertising makeover, you go down to the prompt and you're going to, actually, if you need to look at the errors again, this is the file. That's the wrong one I was trying to click, but that's okay. That'll open that in just a sec. Or, you know, maybe it won't. Oh, it did. It just was behind it. Okay, so this is the, oh, goodness. This is the file that you guys downloaded last week. So just a reminder, these are the different errors. Okay. And you're going to be downloading this file right here. This is going to have the text copy that you're going to use for this week. So once you open that up, I'm going to delete that because I don't want you guys putting text. So this is all the information that needs to be included on your ad, on your, excuse me, banner. And if you notice, we're going to scroll down just a little bit so I can show you these benchmarks, these examples. Have them load up. So you'll see, bring the Word document back up. We have Sky Studio grand opening, Sky Studio grand opening, 20% off of retail with the date. Visit skystudios.com, same thing. Okay, visit skystudios.com, all retail, 20% off. There's actually no date listed on here, which is interesting. Something that they obviously had missed. And actually, maybe that was something that was added later because this benchmark does not have a date either. So, but you see Sky Studios grand opening, all retail, 20% off. Visit skystudios.com. Now, I'm not looking for you guys to copy either of these benchmarks. These are just here to kind of give you an idea of, you know, some design, you know, what we're kind of looking for. Okay, so this one actually, I didn't even mention this. This I think was the Swiss International style, I think. Yep, Swiss style. And then this one I believe was Art Deco. Yep, Art Deco. Okay. So you can actually, sorry, I keep scrolling up and down. I don't want to make everybody dizzy. But you can see for the Swiss style, we have some really sharp contrast with the black and white, the black and red, the white and red, large areas of color, fairly geometric, very grid-like. You know, there isn't a lot of kind of anamorphic, organic, you know, bubbly kind of shapes. It's all very straight lines, that kind of thing, nice crisp lines. For the Art Deco, we have some patterning. We have some really kind of elegant fonts here, some, you know, kind of design, these kind of decorative design elements, the triangles and the diamonds and all that kind of thing. Some very, a pale kind of color palette, which might not necessarily be indicative of the era, but, you know, depending on what era you're going to be looking at. This Art Deco one, it could have been modified even more slightly, kind of maybe look a little bit metallic, you know, that kind of thing. You're going to be bringing in the aspects or the characteristics of the era into your ad. So your instructions here, you're going to use Illustrator, like I mentioned, and the ad size, if you notice, they were taller than they were wide, so you're going to do a 300 by 600 pixel ad, and industry standard means 300 would be wide and 600 would be tall. So width times height is industry standard. If you are doing something three-dimensional, like a box, you would actually put length before that, so it would be length times width times height, and that's something that a lot of people get confused about. So width times height. And then when you are finished, you will save your file. Similar type of naming convention as last week's assignment, and you'll save it as a PDF so that I can view it. If it's saved as an Illustrator file or an InDesign file, which you're not supposed to be in InDesign this week anyways, that doesn't mean someone won't do it. I can't open the zip folders, so I need it in a PDF so that I don't waste your time and in not grading your project. And then you have the rubric down here, just like the rest of the projects. If you are having any problems trying to remember what it was you're supposed to do, you can kind of just click through the rubric here. So going back to the show, we have the assignment number 2 in 5 steps. We're going to choose or research the period. Like I mentioned, you're going to choose one of the 3 eras. And if you need to do a little bit more research, feel free to go ahead. You probably did plenty last week, but if you feel like you're still not quite sure of what exemplifies that particular style, that's absolutely 100% fine, and I encourage a little bit more research. You know, take a look at the colors, maybe the lines or the shapes, the fonts, something, maybe patterning, some kind of texture, things like that are some of the features that you'll take a look at and try to determine if that's indicative of the era. You're going to set up the file for 300 by 600 pixels. You'll use that text from the Word document that I showed you. Okay, right here, Sky Studio, grand opening, etc., etc. Make sure, oh, excuse me, I'm skipping over here. Use the provided text, apply appropriate font and elements. So that's kind of what we were just referring to up here. You know, finding a font or fonts that kind of work together, and elements, shapes, lines, patterns, textures. Number 4, be sure to apply those principles: contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. And then you'll save the Illustrator file, export it to a PDF. Make sure you save both. The Illustrator will be for your purposes. You always want to make sure that you save the native file, the file that you happen to be working in, even if that's not what you're submitting to me or another professor, so that you can make edits later on if you need to. You'll be surprised. Sometimes 10 years from now, you might remember a project that you did today and need to go back and work on it again. And then the PDF is what you're going to be submitting to me. And when you actually submit your PDF to me, just make sure you put the era in the comments, because it's a lot easier for me to be able to find it, and then I don't mistake your project for a different error and grade you incorrectly. I want to make sure that I know exactly what you're doing so that I don't give you a poor grade when maybe you were thinking you did exactly what you were supposed to do. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. And you know, I have this little note down here. This is your opportunity to learn or do or use something new. And what you use and how you'll use it, it depends on the styles you're going to choose. So like I mentioned before with those benchmarks, I'm not looking for you to recreate those two layouts. Here is where you can start to create new things on your own. This is your choices, your styles. So, so now, in terms of trying to figure out the style, these are a few things to consider. So, you know, pull up, let's say I want to do the Victorian era. This is just going to be graphic design, excuse me. Okay, I'm just pulling something up here. Okay, a great way to kind of get a broad idea is literally to pull up Google and hit images, and you have a whole bunch of different examples. You see, you know, even just by looking in this one window, I see a lot of browns, tans, goldens, maybe reds or maroons. A few light blues kind of thrown in there a little bit. We have a lot of these decorative kind of elements here. And actually, look at this. We even have, let me see if I can scroll in. No, I can't do it actually. I thought maybe I could zoom in a little bit more because we have a lot of kind of different logos here that are kind of intricate. We have a really kind of neat, swirly, leafy, decorative emblem here. Maybe it's almost kind of indicative of maybe like a brooch that, you know, a Victorian woman might wear. We have some patterning right behind here. We have some swirly kind of fonts. So, you know, these are all kind of examples of the different things that I might pull into my own design. If you notice actually as well, there's a lot of, you know, like borders or floral elements. They like to, oh, actually I like this one a lot. Yeah, steampunk is kind of a very similar looking style, but I think it's more industrial as well, which it kind of gives a very intricate design similar to like maybe the floral elements, but instead it uses a lot of kind of tools, wheels, you can see gears, wrenches, that kind of stuff. Yeah, see, this is actually a very similar kind of thing. So this wouldn't necessarily be Victorian, but the steampunk kind of style is actually kind of reminiscent of Victorian. So, so this, you know, that's kind of one way to extract the items that you're looking at. And actually, this is kind of a neat, you know, this is just, it looks like just a soap packaging, but you can see it's got a really, really decorative border right around the edge. The two fonts, it looks like they're probably the same font, but they used a black outline around this one, and this one is just a reversed image. It has the white within that black box. We have even 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm counting, you know, maybe that one's 6 maybe, because I think that's even a little bit different than this one. A whole bunch of different kinds of patterns, even just within this little teeny soap packaging. So we have a lot that we can extrapolate just from a Google image search. So, you know, take a look at the way that the style uses point, line, shape, color, texture, type. And then see, these are the elements right here. You can also, or you should also be looking at how that style used contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. Are there large areas that are kind of empty and open? Are pretty much, is everything, you know, spaced out pretty evenly? repetition, is that style? Did they use the exact same font throughout the entire thing, or do they use contrast by using a more plain font with a decorative font to kind of balance it out? So those are some things. And as you're kind of flipping through, make some notes, sketch things out either in Illustrator or on a scratch pad, whichever is easier for you. Find those different components, and then, oops, excuse me, sorry. Use Illustrator to convert those items to vector if you need to, and then modify everything else as needed. I have a couple of things that I downloaded. I wasn't sure if I was going to do Victorian or grunge today, so I have downloaded a couple of different items that I'll be kind of working with as well. So I'm just trying to make sure that I get everything there. Okay, so we're gonna do the demo right now, and then I'll actually go over the tools and the tips here. So we are going to start off by just going back to the assignment real quick. Again, we're just going to confirm 300 by 600, and I'm actually going to copy the file name here so that when I save my project, I have it all ready to go. That just kind of ensures that the file naming convention's accurate. What is going on here? Oh, there we go. It's just being slow. Okay, so now like I mentioned, we have 300 is the width, 600 is the height, and make sure that this one is in pixels. Okay, whoa, goodness, look at that. See, look what just happened. I should have had pixels selected first. Okay, there we go. And I'm not changing that. I was just clicking to get it to change here. We don't have to worry about bleeds or anything because this is going to be just digital. Yes, Lanita, good question. You absolutely can use different colors than what you used in the flashcards. So we're not essentially looking for you guys to replicate something that you did in the flashcards. We're simply looking for you to kind of extrapolate the information that you researched for those flashcards, and then kind of carry over the knowledge, carry over the information, not necessarily your layout. So if you, for example, are doing the Victorian era like I'm going to be doing here, and you decide that you want to use a different font, that's absolutely okay. We're not looking for you to match it by any means. And I have artboards in here that I don't want. So just give me 1 second to get rid of these guys. Ugh, you know what? I'm actually just going to start clean because I don't want to confuse anybody. There we go, 300 by 600. Obviously need one artboard. Okay, so there we go. Now I'm going to save this. I always just save to my desktop just because that's easy for me, and then you guys don't get bored watching where I save everything. It's a Kinney, and we're going to do the Victorian era. Okay. Now, like I mentioned, I actually already have a few things that I have saved. Just have to remember which one was which, because I saved, I think, 3 images for the grunge era and 3 for the Victorian era. So I got to figure out which one is which, especially when you have, okay, so that was obviously for grunge, not the one I want. This one, I believe. Let's see. Nope, that was also for the grunge one. Also, there we go. Okay, so now I know that I have actually mentioned this in the announcements, but I will reiterate it right now. There are lots of resources out there for stock photos, for stock vector, all sorts of great things for fonts, and there are plenty out there that you do not need to pay for. And you as students, That's kind of an important thing, obviously. I downloaded these images from VectEasy. The only downside to VectEasy is that you only have a certain number of downloads per day unless you get a subscription. But typically, I think it's like 4 or 5 of them, and how often do you really need more than that? You could also try Vexels. There's a lot of different vector type imagery in there. Although it's going to take a minute, of course, to work on it. Okay, same thing. You search, if I wanted to look up unicorns, what the heck? It's going to come up with all sorts of stuff. And typically on these sites, you have like some kind of advertisement for iStock. And if you happen to click on those, it's going to bring you to iStock's website, and that's where you have to pay stuff. Those are typically the better ones. But after you've been doing this for a little while, you can actually use a lot of these other things, and then you can modify them how you want, and that works as well. So there's that. And then, excuse me, my favorite font site, although you might find that you like other font sites, and that's absolutely okay, is defont.com. I love how it's categorized. You can kind of, I can very easily find something right in here for the Victorian era. And it also provides different suggestions here. And sometimes the suggestions that they give is exactly what you are kind of looking for. So that is also helpful. You could also use Adobe Font, myfont.com. That one you have to pay for. There's tons of them out there. So you could legitimately just type in free fonts, and you would probably come up with a lot of different resources. So I have the couple of images that I downloaded. I am going to copy and paste my type or my text copy into Illustrator. And the reason why I do that, and this is just on my own personal preference, I like to have the text already in here, and I kind of delete as I go, once I decide, okay, I'm going to put this guy up here. Well, then I can delete it from there, and I know that I have what I have everything that I need. So I am going to embed this image right here. That's something you might need to do if you're going to download images as opposed to just using your own. In order to modify them, you're going to need to embed them into Illustrator. And there we go. I am not going to use this pink, but I do like that patterning in the back. So I'm actually going to see if I can isolate. You know what? I can isolate it, but not without removing a lot of, oh, for goodness sakes, not without removing a lot of the image. So I'm actually going to make a little copy over here just so I don't lose it. And let's start eliminating. Apparently, I have some updates from Adobe. There we go. And get rid of that guy. And you know what? I think I'm actually going to do this. I'm actually going to cut this whole thing off right there. Ooh, not really what I wanted to do. Because it's eliminating some of that up there, but that's okay. See, now I'm trying to make a decision as to what I want to do. And this is part of the really cool thing about the design world is I can make decisions as I go. And if I don't like it, I can change it. And you guys as students are going to have your own process as you work. I'm going to get rid of that guy too. Let's make that a little bit symmetrical. 1, 2, 1, 2. There we go. Okay, I think I have, come on. There we go. I've got enough, I think, there. All right, and I am also going to use something over here. Haven't decided yet, though. You know what? Actually, let's try to lay some of this stuff out before I do any of that. And also, make sure you remember to save as you go, because especially when you kind of get into the designing, it is very easy to forget and end up having the program crash on you. You guys have seen how my how Illustrator here is being very slow for me today, and it's the worst to end up losing something just because you didn't save it. You work for 3 hours and then all of a sudden it's gone. All right, I'm gonna use, oh, I don't like that one either. I'm looking for a very fancy script font, and you can use DeFont, you can use one of the other resources. I don't even like Edwardian for that either. I have probably several thousand fonts just on my own, not all of them installed. But that's the reason why I'm not looking for another one on my, you know, on the, whoops. That's why I'm not looking for something different, because I know I have plenty of scripts in here. You could use font managers as you guys download more and more fonts, and that will help you a little bit. I do have one, but I don't want to waste time, you know, going all the way through it. So let's see. Script apparently is just like the other one. All right, I'm going to look for one more, and if I can't, then I'm just going to pick one of the ones that I looked at. I don't like wasting time. Scriptina probably would have worked. Okay, so you know what? Yeah, that's not really as swirly as I want. So, okay, we're gonna go with the very first one that I had, and we're going to pretend that Sky Studio is an art gallery, and there we go. Maybe they have a grand opening of their actual gallery instead of maybe some kind of opening, you know, like an art gallery, or an artist's opening, exhibit, whatever. Sometimes it's kind of hard to design and think at the same time, or design and speak at the same time. So now I'm just kind of creating a little pattern here. I'm actually going to align all these guys, or excuse me, distribute all of these guys, the spacing, just so. There we go. And I'm not going to use that pink. I actually like this tan color, so I'm going to utilize that as well. And I think, though, what I want to do, you know what, I'm going to make this, I'm going to go with maybe some kind of bluish. We'll see how that looks after I've put this on top. And I think I'd like to change the opacity a little bit. And I'll get my effects. Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with it. I don't know that I like the blue, but I could change that later if I wanted to. And actually, you know what? I think I'm even going to, I think I'm actually going to make this a gradient instead of using that. Do I want to do that? I don't know. Well, that was kind of an interesting effect, not really where I was going with it. No, you know what? I am going to go back, I think. And this is one of the great things about this particular industry. It's so much fun to experiment. Let's see. I think I'd like to feather it somehow, but I'm not sure. No, actually, I think I am going to leave it. See, now I'm like so undecided here. But as we do this, I'm going to create a little offer. Let's see. And this is going to be for the 20% off. And I think I'm going to use one of, oops, my goodness. I'm going to use one of these bonnets. Oop. Nope, Lanita. Not sure why it would be muted or why you wouldn't be able to hear me. Hopefully it is definitely still recording. So we'll see if maybe it was just something for, Let's see. How about now, Lanita? Can you hear me now? I've raised the volume a little bit. Okay, so maybe we were just having an issue with volume. Okay. So I am going to, I have my block here, and actually I want to see if maybe, you know, I was going to use actually some interesting corners, but I think I've actually decided against that. Let's do this guy right here. And I'm going to grab that and bring it on over. And maybe make a little, oh, that was way too stretched out. And this is where we start running into issues where you would need to modify things. So I really would like to make that asymmetrical, but in the interest of time, I'm simply going to work with the shape that I have here. Otherwise, it would take me a little bit too much time to edit this, and I don't like taking up too much time in these classes just for mind design work. Okay, so there we go. So we're kind of working with this here. We have that maroon, we have the faded blue. I think I'm even going to, oops. Oh, for goodness sake, it's not, there. I am going to select that. I want to make that all a slightly lighter blue. There we go. And I could, I suppose, do that by just changing the opacity of my block here, but I don't want to do that. That's my design choice. That's what I'm deciding. And I want to change the opacity here as well. Oh, no, I don't. Yeah, do I? No, I don't. I will lighten it, though. There we go. Okay, so now what have we got here? We have a website I'm going to put right down at the bottom, because that's just kind of an afterthought. You know, if you want to take advantage of the offer or maybe see a little bit more, go to visit Sky Studio or go to skystudios.com. I'm going to make this capital because of the font that I want to do. I actually want to do a slightly, slightly less fancy font to kind of use contrast and make this a bit more readable. Websites are very tricky to use script with because it can make it very difficult to read. So I want something kind of plain. Style now. A very basic sans serif font will work. I could probably even stick with the myriad. Goodness, I am having a very tough time with my decision making today. And you guys might end up finding that you also have, yeah, I'll do that one. You guys might end up finding that there are going to be days that you also have issues, and that's totally normal. Totally normal. Okay, I think I actually, oops, I want to make this a brown though, I think. I don't want to make that a, maybe a little bit darker. I don't want to make that black. And I'm actually going to make this the same brown. Actually, I'm going to use my swatches so that I can do the same thing up here. Use the same brown, kind of repeat it. And you know what? I think I actually even want to make it here too. I was going to keep that red, but I think the brown balance is a little bit better. And what else? What do we have here? Okay, so I did the grand opening. No, I didn't. I did the website. There we go. And I'm going to put the offer in there and the grand opening information up here along with the date. And I should have all of my information. I'm actually also going to take a look and see what other kind of little design elements I could use in here for, actually, you know what? I'm going to do this right here because this has a very similar look to what I used for the offer. And I can kind of, once I make it that brown color again, kind of frame my Sky Studio here. Let's see. There we go. Maybe even adjust the angle a little bit to get it to fit better in there. And you know what? I think I'm actually even going to maybe, I'm going to use a pure white. Just to increase the contrast just a touch. Just a touch. There we go. Make it a little bit more interesting. And I think I'm also even going to, oops, wrong one. I'm actually also going to put one more color back here. Lanita, what would you say about another color back there? What color do you think we might use that would work? I actually think maybe another blue would work. Any thoughts? Ooh. No. Hopefully she can still hear me. So here now we have this this kind of blue area up here that is kind of connected to the background. I am going to, because I know we're starting to run out of time here, and it looks like, so we probably want, you think the blue looks good? Okay, good. We're starting to, like I said, we're starting to run out of time, so we probably won't get to any additional critiques today. Sometimes I really prefer to make sure that I am spending as much time as possible on the demos, though. So that's quite all right. So I am going to now. I'm actually going to isolate. Whoops, actually. I'm going backwards here today. I'm going to isolate these two right here. And this font was Petra, so we're going to make that same thing, but I'm going to make it a little bit thicker. And I am going to use the Vivaldi for here as well. And I'm going to make that a lot bigger. Let's go to 65. Because that is kind of what we want it focused on. And, oh, whoops. All retail. And I feel like this is even kind of missing something. I think maybe I need to make it a little bit bold. So that particular one, yeah, it doesn't actually have a bold option. So I'm just going to add a slight stroke. You just got to be careful when you do that because it can be very, very easy to make it unreadable when that's the way that you're making your type bold. Let's go back to my swatches, which are hiding. There we go. Use the brown again there. Oops, gave it a stroke and I didn't want to. And I actually also have to make sure that I get that one as well. And, you know, I could probably actually even take one of these guys. And let's flip it. I could have used the other one there, but I didn't realize what I wanted to do until after I'd already done it. And we'll make sure these are all aligned and actually make sure it's also aligned within that box. Okay, and grand opening. Make sure, let's see, so it's grand opening, we want the date. You know what, I actually am going to leave this, the plain font, because we have the, excuse me, the script font right up top here, and I don't want it to overpower, so I do want it a little bit bigger. And let's go, let's find my type. And I'm going to just decrease the leading just a little bit. My swatches, again, my swatches keep hiding on me. And then I'm actually going to 17, I'm gonna make that 2019 since we're not in 2017 anymore. Vivaldi. Do I wanna do that? I don't know, yeah. I don't know that I like that. I think I probably, yeah, I should probably just keep, sorry, I know that I make funny noises. No, I think I actually do want to keep it the sans serif font. So let's go back there. I was going to say, why is that italicized? Because I selected an italic version. There we go, I like that better. And so now I could keep messing around with this until I had it just absolutely perfect. But to, you know, in the interest of time, I would probably, if I were to continue working on this, whoops, oh, I hate isolation mode. I would probably actually create, maybe use another one of those little swirly design elements. Oh, for God's sakes. To go in between these two right here. And I'd probably even block out this. I actually really liked this guy right here. So I would either use that design element or use something similar, or maybe even a combination of this frame and this frame to kind of have it repeat throughout the whole ad. So we have some contrast because we have the dark brown against the white or the lighter background. We have repetition because we have the light blue here, the light blue in the background. Repetition with the the swirly kind of design elements. Proximity where you have the spacing that is nothing is really encroaching on one another. I could probably even put a white glow around this text to make it a little bit more readable against that background there. So, I mean, you could spend hours and hours and hours working on these designs. And that is why it is, it is it's an underappreciated profession, because it does take a while to get a nice look. And people sometimes don't realize how much time and effort you put into it. I wanted the assignments, not the announcements, because I did want to make sure that I went over the assessment. Nope, wrong one. I am just click happy today. Okay, before I actually briefly go over this, Lanita, do you have any questions of everything so far? Or on anything, not everything? No questions? All right. So we have for your assessment, after you have completed your, excuse me, where is it? After you've completed your ad and you have file, saved it as a PDF, or export as a PDF, that is completely up to you. It's essentially the exact same thing. You are going to write out your critique. You're going to include an introduction paragraph, a body paragraph, and a conclusion paragraph where you explain what you were creating, why you needed to make it, any considerations that you thought of when you were making your design. So it might be smart to write some notes down as you are creating. Then go into detail about your design and how you chose what you did, why you chose what you did, the different elements that you've used, and the different principles that you've used. You can specify the individual items, and then the conclusion paragraph is to summarize or justify your decisions and how you think they work best. So once you have gone through that, excuse me, you are going to do one of two things. You can either just use Microsoft Word to write the paper and then bring it into InDesign, or you can simply bring it into InDesign. That is fine, however you want to do it. I personally think it would just be easier to just do it in InDesign. But if you have a problem with spelling or whatever and you want to use the word tools, that's totally okay. Just make sure that you place both your ad and your critique in that InDesign document. So you're going to have, you can see it here. You're going to have your ad as the second page here, and your critique is going to be this first page. So that's a couple of benchmarks right there from examples. Make sure that you save using the file convention, the file naming convention. Export it as a PDF because, like I said, that's what I can open, and then submit that for grading. So because we're kind of out of time now, because I was yakking too much. So just some tools and tips you can use. Is this a separate document? That will be for your assessment, Lanita. So you're going to have just your poster submitted as a PDF for your assignment. And then for the assessment, it will be a separate document. That document will include the poster and your critique. So yes, you will have the two different documents because you'll be uploading them for two different projects. Does that answer your question? Okay, good, it did. So just some tools and some extra tips. We have, there are lots of Illustrator tutorials on Adobe and YouTube. If the lynda.com playlist doesn't really cover everything, go ahead and specify exactly what you're looking for, because the more specific you get, the more narrow the search is going to be, and you'll find things a little bit easier. Use effects if they're appropriate. I was using a lot of opacity effects because I was kind of trying to mute the colors a little bit. If a distressed effect is going to work because you're doing something grungy, like that's absolutely fine. Don't overdo it if it's not going to be representative of that style. Consider using imagery and graphics to copy, modify, trace, whatever. Use the appropriate style fonts using some of the resources we discussed. Using appropriate colors, similarly, if it's representative of your style. Make sure you are using the CRAP principles and checking the rubric. And like I mentioned, taking notes for your assessment. So, and I actually already kind of went over the self-assessment and the design process. Just make sure that you use spell check or grammar check. Using the Grammarly tool it can be helpful. And I mean, that is in a nutshell how you're going to learn how to justify your reasoning to your client or your supervisor. So that, and like I mentioned, we have some examples here. So if you're really not sure of how you're going to go about starting your critique, you can read through this just for some ideas. Please don't plagiarize. But you can definitely look through it for some ideas of how to get started on that. So, and you have your rubric right here to kind of work on that. So hopefully we don't have any more questions, and we're kind of out of time now. So I would like to thank you guys for coming on down today, and join me on Thursday in my multi-session if you need any help. Thanks. Bye-bye.